always Steph here, if you don't already know, and on this channel I just talk about all things careers and all things lifestyle. And in today's video I'm going to be answering some questions that I got in from Instagram. So I asked everyone, what do you want to know about qualification, the qualification process, what I'm thinking of doing, all that sorts of stuff, and I had a ton of questions in, so I'm going to do my best to get through all of those questions today. If you have any more questions after this video, please do feel free to comment them down below and I'll do my best to answer them, but let's get straight into it. Okay, so question number one, we've got, how difficult has it been deciding which team to qualify into? I don't think it's been terribly difficult. It's weird because until it happened, I didn't realize how it happened, if that makes sense. But one piece of advice that I got right from when I was a first seater, because I used to ask about qualification right from back then, right? And one piece of advice I got was, you'll kind of just know. And I didn't really like that answer when I first got it, because I was kind of like, okay, but you're not really like telling me what to do, right? What do you mean I'll just know? How will I just know? But will I know what the just knowing feels like? That sort of thing. But when I got to certain seats, I did genuinely just know. Like, I felt like, oh, this work is actually something that interests me, for example. I felt like, oh, I really quite like the team. I like the way the partners do certain things. I like the culture of the team, that sort of stuff. And I had that with a couple of teams. And I feel like for me, once I experienced those seats, like literally within the first 2 to 3 months, I would say, I was kind of like, this is definitely a team that I could apply for. So because of that, I didn't necessarily find like choosing the teams that I wanted to apply for that difficult. I applied, so for full disclosure, for me, capital markets and private equity were the teams that I wanted to apply for, right? So that was quite easy to kind of do. I still obviously have my other teams that I've done as like, you know, if I decide I wanted to go to external firms, for example, I can still apply for those teams in external firms. But in terms of in my firm, I feel like those are the two teams that I kind of wanted to do. Question number two, so we've got, are you considering moving to a different firm as an NQ or even in-house? Great question. At the moment, actually, it's probably easier to think about how I set my goals. And I recently did a video about using lifestyle design to kind of set career goals. So go check out that video. But for me, my next kind of career goal doesn't necessarily align with being in-house yet. Doesn't mean I won't think about going in-house at a later point, but yeah, kind of where I am now, it doesn't really align with that. In terms of going to other firms, so I did kind of have a look, and what tends to happen when you are in your fourth seat, or even at the end of your third seat sometimes, is that recruiters will reach out to you. Depending on how your LinkedIn is set up, so if you've kind of got it set up quite well, they will know what seats you have done, and they'll reach out to you and they'll say, you know, this firm is looking for an NQ in this area, and it usually aligns to a seat that you have probably done. So I have had a number of recruiters kind of reach out on that basis. At the time when they started reaching out to me, I didn't 100% know where it was I was going to apply to, so I didn't know it was going to be capital markets and private equity. So I was kind of just, you know, keeping all of my options open. Since I kind of decided that, okay, these are the kind of two areas that I really want to focus on, I, funnily enough, didn't actually have any recruiters sending options for those particular areas. Like, they were sending options for other areas that I'd done, but not those two areas. So I was kind of just like, well, if it seems like the market's not really hiring for what I'm looking for, I'm not going to look outside of the firm because I want to stick to what I want to do, kind of thing. But I mean, having said all of that, I'm still open. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking outside of your firm. And I think from a career perspective, it makes sense for you to not put all of your eggs into one basket. So even if you definitely want to stay at the firm that you are currently training at or that you're about to train at, that's not a problem, but I would still advise applying to at least one other firm, even if you don't necessarily intend to like move there, just because A, it's good practice, like the interviewing and all that kind of stuff. It's good practice, it's good to keep those skills up, you never know when you'll need them. And B, it's just good career like advice. You shouldn't always just rely on one thing. So that would be kind of my advice to anyone who's going through a similar circumstance and kind of wondering whether they should look elsewhere or just stick to what they know, kind of thing. Even if you feel like you want to stay where you want to stay, that's perfectly fine, but I would always advise not putting all of your eggs into one basket. Question 3, so how did you choose your seats for your TC, and did you regret any of your seat choices? So this was a really interesting one. Right off the bat, when I came into my TC, I knew I didn't want to do contentious work. I kind of knew this because it was a couple of different things. So I'd spoken to different people about the work that they had been doing, so whether it was associates or trainees at the time. And from the sounds of what contentious work sounded like, it just didn't sound like it was for me. And one of the main reasons for that was because I felt like contentious work takes a really long time to kind of complete, right? So from start to finish, it tends to take quite a long time. And I felt like the way I am as a person, I don't really want to be working on deals that take such a long time to finish, basically. I also did one of my vacation schemes in an IP team. And I sat with a contentious associate, so an associate who did a lot of trademark work, but would go to kind of courts to deal with that. That work was very, very interesting. Like, the deals I did were interesting, but the court side of things, I just said, if this is what this is like, and I actually find IP interesting, God forbid I'm doing contentious work in an area that I don't find interesting. Like, that's just not going to work for me. So from there, I kind of knew I didn't like contentious. My first seat was in debt finance, and one of the main reasons why it was because I spoke to someone who was a seat above me. So when I was about to start, they were already in their first seat and they were in debt finance, and I kind of just spoke to them and I was like, oh, how are you finding this seat, all that kind of stuff. And from the feedback that they gave, I thought, do you know what, this sounds like a good seat for me to do first, because it sounds like I'll get really good training, it sounds like I'm going to learn a lot, and it sounds like it will help me figure out what type of lawyer I want to be, right? So I thought that was helpful, and that's why I did debt finance, and that's how I kind of chose that first seat. For my second seat, again, a similar kind of thing happened. I ended up having a conversation with, at the time, the person was a trainee, but they ended up qualifying into this practice area. And I ended up having a conversation with them. This is a practice area I wasn't even considering, so I didn't have capital markets on my radar at all. Before I started, I thought I was going to be either a projects lawyer, I thought I was going to love IP, but then I remember I did the contentious thing and I was like, I don't really want to do contentious IP. Or I thought I was going to go into tax. Don't know where tax came from. I think I just heard about it randomly in like a presentation or something, and I thought it sounded cool. But those are the areas I thought I was going to go into. So in my head, I was going to like, make sure you do those in your TC. So second seat now, I had intended to put down tax and IP, and I can't remember what the third area was that I'd intended to put down, but I'd intended to put down something else. But then I spoke to this person and they told me about capital markets, and I thought, oh, this actually sounds like a bit of me. This sounds very interesting. It sounds like the work that I would like to do. Let me try it. Why not? I'm only in my second seat. Like, it's not necessarily like the decider or anything like that. I've still got 2 more seats where I can do the IP and the tax, for example. So it's not the end of the world. So I put capital markets down and I got it and I loved it. I did debt capital markets, I did structured finance. I loved both sides of that. I really enjoyed the work. So I'm really glad I kind of changed my mind, as it were, and I put that down. Third seat, private equity. So my thinking here was that I realized that I liked finance. So obviously I did my first seat in debt finance. I did my second seat in capital markets, both finance-y seats, and I did enjoy them. So I realized I like finance, but I just kind of thought, from a self-awareness perspective, I realized that it would be good for me to get a bit broader training, especially if I didn't want to do a contentious seat. I wanted to do a corporate seat because that is a bit different to finance. It's still similar in the sense that it's very, transactional, it's very process management, that sort of thing, but the type of work I would be doing would be different. So it'd be giving me a different level of training. So that's why I put down corporate private equity. And at my particular firm, we have 2 kind of corporate seats, well, 2 big corporate seats, and then there's also like smaller specialist corporate seats as well. But I wanted to do a broad corporate seat. So it was either going to be private equity or mergers and acquisitions. And in all honesty, I wasn't really that fussed about which one I would get, like whether it be M&A or PE, and I actually put both down. But I put PE down first. I don't even really remember why, and I happened to get PE. So again, very happy that I got that because I knew that that's what I wanted, and I got what I wanted. Final seat, I put down project finance as my first choice. Main reason for this being that when I actually applied, so remember I said at the beginning, I kind of felt like I was going to be a project finance lawyer. It's something I can speak about another day, but I really do feel like there was a period of time where a lot of firms kind of did presentations on all of the Africa work that was done in project finance, knowing full well that a lot of, black people wanted to do Africa work, right? Obviously not every single black person, we're not a monolith, but a lot of black people want to do Africa work when it comes to legal work. And I just thought that I would get that in project finance work. During the course of my training contract, I came to realize very quickly that I could get Africa work absolutely anywhere, so I didn't have to do project finance. And also project finance has fairly long deals as well, which, like I said at the beginning, I don't particularly like. However, I still wanted to try it just because it's something that I always thought I wanted to do, right? So I thought, you know what? It was always on your mind, try it just so that you can confirm that this is for you or it isn't for you. And that's currently the seat that I'm in now. So to answer your question, I have not regretted any of my seat choices, but that is how I made each decision each time. So it's slightly different for some of them, but that's how I did that. Next question, are you stuck in the practice area you choose? I think you mean, so obviously we do 4 seats. Well, I do 4 seats. Different firms have different ways they do their training contract, but I have done 4 seats. Typically, yes, you do apply to one of your 4 seats. However, there isn't really anything stopping you from applying to a different seat. So, for example, I haven't done IP, right? And if IP was hiring, considering that IP is kind of rooted in contracts law, for example, there wouldn't really be anything stopping me from applying to an IP seat. I would obviously still have to prove my experience because I don't have direct experience with the team, but there's nothing saying, you have to have done a CK to apply, if that makes sense. Okay, next question. So, do you have to interview with a partner in the practice area you are interested in? Every firm does this differently, and even within firms, every practice area does this differently. So in my firm, there are a couple of practice areas who have requested for interviews or assessments. Not entirely sure what all of the assessments are. For the practice area I've applied to, I do not have to do that. That's not a requirement. But actually in some of the other offices, so I know like Dubai, for example, they are hiring. I don't know if it's just Dubai, to be fair, but I know that Dubai are hiring, for example, and they have requested for like interviews for areas that in London haven't requested for interviews. Do you get what I mean? And it's the same practice area. So it just depends on each office, it depends on the practice area, stuff like that. Me personally, I don't have any like required interviews. Having said that, you typically, when you know you want to apply somewhere, will speak to like the partners that you've worked with in that team, right? And that can be a form of an interview. Like obviously it's not going to be a formal, prepare your answers to competency-based questions or anything like that. But you're talking to them, they know you want to go back there, you know you want to go back there. It is low-key an informal interview, right? Like you're going to talk about what your experience has been like since you've left that seat. You're going to talk about what kind of lawyer you want to be in the future. You're going to talk about secondments, all that kind of stuff. So it kind of can be an interview, but it's not a formal thing. Next question, can you qualify in a practice area you explored on your international secondment? Most definitely. Like I kind of said before, there's an opportunity to qualify into any area that you have experience in, whether that experience be from your training contract or for a lot of people who may have been paralegals beforehand, you might want to qualify into like that area, stuff like that. So you can definitely qualify into anywhere. Do you get time off between the end of your TC and NQ position? So this differs on a firm by firm basis to the best of my knowledge. Vast majority of firms, from what I know, do offer you what we call like a qualification leave. It can be paid, it can be unpaid. Again, that differs from firm to firm. So if I stay at the firm that I'm at, then I can have qualification leave. If I choose to move to a different firm, what I would personally just do is just defer my start date so that I can get qualification leave. It wouldn't officially be leave because obviously no one's paying me for it, but like if I finish at the end of February in this seat, I just wouldn't start my next job until like May, so that I've got some time off. Do you get what I mean? So that's how I would kind of work around that, but each to their own. Next question, will you stay at the same firm you trained at or look for an NQ position elsewhere? So I have kind of answered this a little bit, but my main thing here is just, I would always say don't keep all your eggs in one basket. I am not keeping all of my eggs in one basket. I do very much want to stay at the firm that I'm at, but I understand how careers generally work and life generally works. And I think generally in life, it's advisable to always kind of spread your eggs a little bit. What criteria are you using to decide which seat you want to qualify in? Yes, so a few different things. Quality of the work. So by quality of work, I'm looking at the types of clients that the particular team has, and also the nature of the work that I as a junior would be doing in relation to the deals. Because sometimes you can be in a place where there's like really cool deals, but because of how the company works or because of how the team works, juniors never really get to do anything other than like proofread on those deals, for example. And there's definitely a lot of benefit to proofreading. I'm not saying it's a bad task to do. I proofread a lot, do you know what I mean? Like there's a benefit to it, but I also want to talk to the clients. I also want to negotiate something. I also want to draft something, right? So that sort of thing is important to me, the type of work that I would be doing and the quality of the work. I do also think about the team, but I think about this more so it's less about, is there an individual there that's my best friend that I can go to lunch with every day? And it's more about what is the culture of the team like? So even if those individuals were to leave, how would the team feel, if that makes sense? That can be quite a difficult one to ascertain, but it's something that's important to me, so I take some time to try and figure that out. Like primarily through how I felt when I worked there, but then also by speaking to different people in the team about how they feel. So that's kind of how I figured that out. Also work-life balance, that is important to me. Not so much in the sense that like I need to go out every night with my mates, because that's not what I do generally anyway, but just respecting people's time. Like, don't message me at like 9 p.m. to ask me to run a red line, for example. Fair enough, message me at 9 p.m. because a client needs something urgently at 11 p.m. That's fine, like I can see the urgency in that. But like, I just think sometimes some people don't necessarily respect boundaries, and that is not something that I want to have to deal with post-qualification. Those are the main kind of factors that I would consider. Aside from that, it's just how I found the 6 months, because for me, I'm only applying to seats that I actually sat in, so it's just how I found the 6 months as well. But I hope that helps. Next question, were you active in talking about qualification with training principals throughout your TC? Yes, kind of. So I wouldn't always explicitly be like, oh, I'm thinking about this for qualification, mainly just because I didn't actually know that I was thinking about certain seats for qualification until after I finished the seat, if that makes sense. But I did definitely, so throughout my TC, I would always, first of all, know who the training principal was for that particular team, because it's important to know who you would need to like reach out to when the time comes. And then second of all, I would just have general catch-ups with them. So like I would just ask them things like, what makes a good trainee? What kind of skills should I be trying to like work on? Like that sort of thing. So that again, when the time came, I then kind of knew what I would need to focus on, that sort of thing. And it also meant that when I would reach out to them now that the time for qualification has come, it didn't seem like, oh, this random person who I've never met or spoken to before is just reaching out to me. Like it's someone that I've spoken to before, if that makes sense. So I think that can also be helpful as well. Having said that, they are the training principals. Like they do know that at qualification time, people are going to reach out to them, right? So it's not necessarily the end of the world if you haven't spoken to them before and then you reach out to them at qualification time. But for me, I just didn't want it to feel awkward or anything like that. What has influenced your decision the most? Type of work / team? Good question. I think type of work is probably the most influential factor for me. Having said that, I think team has definitely played more of a role than some people like to let on. I think people will definitely advise you not to pick a practice area based off of the people, and I agree with that. I think that's right. The reason why that's right is because people come and go, and especially in the legal sector, people really come and go. Like, you might have trained in a particular team, and by the time you qualify, not a single person you trained with was there. That is how quickly people rotate in the legal sector, right? However, like I kind of said before, I do think that the people make up a culture, and the culture is a little bit harder to change. Even as the people leave, that culture will still remain, hopefully. So I do pay attention to the people in the sense that I want to see what kind of culture these people have. Are these the type of people who respect boundaries, like I said? Are they the type of people who have a life outside of work? Are they the type of people who are just friendly? Like, and when I say friendly, I don't mean that we can go to the drink. When I say friendly, I don't mean that we can go to the pub and have a drink. Because that's not actually how I get down. That's not really what I do. So are they the type of people that we can do other things with? Like, can we go to lunch together? Can we just have a chat in the office? Like a normal, non-work related chat, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that definitely weighed a lot for me, but type of work was the most important. What was the SQE like? I did not do the SQE, so I cannot answer that. Maybe ask Life with Mom. I really like her, and I know she's done SQE 1, and I think she's doing SQE 2 now, so ask her. Can I get into a contract or anything with bad grades? I think this is it's a very broad question, and it depends. It depends on a couple of things. First of all, were there extenuating circumstances, and have you disclosed your extenuating circumstances if there were any? That is obviously something that works in your favor. Even outside of that, it depends on what the bad grades were in. So to give you an example, I got really bad grades in public law. So I did UK constitutional, got bad grades in that. I did public international law, got bad grades in that. However, I'm not working in public law now, so nobody really cares that I got bad grades in that. I did really well in contracts. I did okay in tort. Those are the things that people actually cared about for what I'm doing, if that makes sense. So those are the kind of things I would say consider whether the grades match up to where you're actually applying to, and then also consider extenuating circumstances, because that is obviously valid. Final question. How do you know whether to stay or qualify elsewhere, and what's the best approach? So this is definitely something that I've kind of touched on throughout, but I'll just reiterate it again. Don't keep all of your eggs in one basket. So whether you decide staying in like where you've trained is the right thing for you to do, or whether you've actually decided that, do you know what, you don't particularly want to stay where you trained, you want to go to another firm because the area that you want to qualify into, there's a firm out there that's like number one for that particular area, right? So it makes sense for your career to go to that firm. That's fine. I would still say don't put all of your eggs into one basket. What I would say here though is that you also don't want to spread yourself too thin. At the end of the day, this is a job application. It's something that takes time for you to get right. And oftentimes, especially if it's not internal, you are going to be interviewing. You're going to be going through that whole job application process. So you want to make sure you're not applying to 20 firms and you're too tired to do everything properly, right? Apply to firms that make sense for you. So I would say apply to where you're currently training. There hopefully is at least one practice area that you're interested in, at least. If there's 2 or even 3, fine, but hopefully at least one practice area that you like where you are currently training, because that's probably going to be your easiest route, quote unquote, in the sense that it will be the least formal process. Then I would say at least apply for one external firm. Obviously, if you know you definitely want to leave, you'll probably apply for a couple more, maybe 2 or 3, but at least apply for one. And your route into doing that is honestly, especially in the legal field, making sure that you just have a good recruiter on your side. The way you can do that is just speak to people who've already done it. So speak to recent NQs, speak to junior associates, or even recent lateral hires actually in your firm, because they likely would have lateral hired via a recruiter. So speak to them and just ask for recruiter recommendations, because some recruiters are, better than others. So speak to them, get recruiter recommendations, and work with someone who is really looking to actually help you, kind of thing. And then, yeah, like I said, definitely apply to at least one firm outside. So that would be the way that I would approach it. But it's mainly just because I don't believe you should be keeping all of your eggs into one basket. I hope you found this video super helpful. If you have any more questions, like I said at the beginning, please do drop them down below. I will do my best to answer them. Other than that, I'll be back again soon with another video.